Hello again, hope you're all doing well. While we're here, I thought I'd show this off. I was honored to receive this second award. If you look in the back, you'll see I received one as well from CBLS in 2019. It's a huge honor to be selected for the annual Law and Disorder. So congratulations as well to the nearly 24 other award winners who are giving back to the community. And with that said,
on with the show.
In family law, there are two areas where if you disagree with the judge, the odds of reversal on appeal, regardless of the facts, are very low. The first is attorney's fees, and that's an area where the trial court historically enjoys nearly unfettered discretion. And the second, which is the topic of today's case law update, is the division of assets. That's the always fun part of the divorce, where the soon-to-be ex-spouses are fighting over who gets what, and more importantly, how much of it. The reason asset division appeals are so freaking difficult to win is because when the issue goes up on appeal, as appellate lawyers, we have to do more than just say, hey, the judge is wrong. We have to show that the amount of wrongness is so severe that it overcomes that issue's standard of review. Now, if you are new to appeals or it's been a while since you've been at law school, the standard of review is how big of a mistake the judge or the court or whatever has to make before the appellate court is forced to step in. And it's not just one universal test. There's a lot of them depending on what it is that we are appealing. So for example, if we're trying to fight over what the law really means, or we're trying to sort out what the parties actually agreed to in their settlement agreement or in a contract, these things are generally reviewed under the lowest standard, de novo. I'm trying to get my Barry White voice here, but it is failing spectacularly. De novo is so low a standard, the appellate court usually pays no attention to what the trial judge even did. They kind of just huddle up and figure out their own particular ruling on that issue. But when it comes to figuring out what's a fair division in a divorce, who gets what and usually how much of it, judges are empowered with the most unfriendly standard of review. Well, it's unfriendly to lawyers like me trying to get a reversal on appeal, and that standard is the abuse of discretion. Here's the official definition of what that means, but for those that want something that resembles human speak, an abuse of discretion is basically arguing that no other judge in Illinois would have done what the trial judge in that particular case did. In many cases involving this high standard, there needs to be a near absence in the record of any facts supporting how the judge got to their particular ruling. Needless to say, challenging who or how much marital property one gets is almost always a difficult mountain to climb on appeal. Looking at past decisions, judges have been given the green light to allow one party to walk away with the majority of the estate. For example, in this case, where the husband was receiving VA disability, but the wife still got 55%. And of course, old school practitioners may remember the Doty decision, where the wife was affirmed in receiving 78% of the marital estate. And why is it? Well, that's because the law is well settled in this state that an equitable division of the estate does not have to be equal, so long as the reason for giving one parent or one party a bigger slice of the pie tracks along any of these particularly voluminous factors that you're seeing. Yes, it is true. In Illinois, we prefer the division to be 50-50 if we can, but nearly any disproportionate division of the marital estate, no matter how unfair it might be on the party having to bring their checkbook into court, has historically speaking enjoyed a high affirmation rate on appeal. Now, I did consider highlighting some of the factors that historically resulted in a disproportionate distribution, but since today's case involves a non-factor, I will save that deep dive for another video. Okay, so without going down too many rabbit holes, I'm going to return to the topic at hand. When you are trying to appeal, what complicates it the most is this long-standing rule that a good appeal cannot fix a bad trial. If a law firm gives me an appeal, they refer an appeal to me, I'm actually constrained to the arguments and facts that were developed at trial. Yes, it's true, I can expound on counsel's trial strategy in the brief, but I cannot reinvent it. So when I talk about a good appeal not fixing a bad trial, I'm referring to situations where law firms kind of take a suboptimal approach to their client's case. In those situations, the best I can hope for is kind of a Hail Mary and a very sympathetic court. So my point to all of this introduction is this. Given all of these roadblocks, it should not come as a shock that the only lawyer cuckoo enough to challenge a 50-50 division of assets Also makes cringy YouTube videos that often verge on fever dreams. And yes, that video actually aired a few years ago. And if you followed my channel for any reasonable length of time, you know that that one by far is not the weirdest thing you've seen here. But what may come as a shock to some of my colleagues is that the appellate court agreed with my argument and reversed the trial court's decision of the marital estate in this recent appeal. Now, to be fair, this is not a first of its kind, world-changing decision, but when we look at past appeals, it is exceptionally rare. I said rare, but I meant to say rare, because, and I'm speaking historically, when the appellate court does intervene in the trial court's decision of the marital estate, it's often because the judge was, well, oftentimes way too aggressive in its division, such as the infamous Kalisoff decision from almost 40 years ago. Which makes my case all the more unique, I suppose, because the reviewing court didn't say, hey, we think this division was too aggressive. What they said was, hey, we don't think this division was aggressive enough. Now, to be fair, marital division appeals are given the sui generis treatment on appeal. We love to use fancy Latin phrases whenever we can in the law, but sui generis just means that we're kind of reviewing this case on a case-by-case basis. Each case is kind of its own thing. This makes citation and comparison of other cases very difficult to argue on an appellate brief unless the fact patterns were really, really close to identical, because what might make sense in one divorce might not in another. So turning back to my appeal, where I represented the ex-wife, the husband had spent some time behind bars and, as the opinion notes, either would not or could not provide support for the party's disabled son who resided exclusively with the wife. As a result, and let's give credit where credit is due, trial counsel in this case, Mark Wainwright of Wainwright & Associates, prudently argued that in lieu of awarding unpayable support under Section 513.5, which would result in almost certainly years of endless and futile collection efforts, the more sensible approach would be to let the wife keep her home and pension, and whatever the husband had, which was very nominal, let him keep his stuff. Now, as I noted earlier, this argument is not found in any of the general 503 factors, but there is precedent for such accommodations in older appellate decisions, namely the Thomas case. Yes, it has the same name as this case that we're talking about. They're 30 years apart, though, and they are not by any means related. But it is a nice coincidence, right? Anyways, newer decisions such as this parentage case push for the imposition of things like 503G trusts, or as we've seen in other decisions, ordering life insurance or both. But there's an Achilles heel to that approach. Neither 503G nor life insurance is going to make really any sense if the soon-to-be ex is a well-established ne'er-do-well. Worth a Google. Anyways, despite counsel's argument for each keeping their own stuff, the trial court disagreed and divided the estate 50-50. What that actually meant is that the wife had to give up half of the home and half of the pension, which presumably was the only source of income for herself and the disabled adult son. Now, given Dad's history of just simply not supporting the disabled adult son who needs lifelong care, this was, as far as the appellate court was concerned, a bridge too far. That's a term that was coined after the failed Allied operation known as Market Garden, led to a lot of bad, terrible things and a gritty 1970s war film packed with a who's who of A-list stars. But as usual, I'm digressing. So, in my appeal, the appellate court reversed and reallocated the estate in a 1/3, 2/3 basis without the need for a remand hearing. From their view, the husband was entitled to something, but given that he was who he was, 50% was, under this fact pattern, unconscionable. Although my case involves setting aside resources for a disabled adult child, this isn't a white elephant case, because I think the reasoning behind this decision can be transferable to other cases involving, let's say, non-custodial parents with significant arrears and or unrealistic prospects for repayment. I mean, why place your client in a position to have to keep coming back to court every couple of years just to get the ex to pay a nominal purge, probably 10 or 20 cents on the dollar, just to stay out of jail? Although that approach may result in more billable hours, at least for certain firms, I think we can all agree from a big picture standpoint, that strategy is suboptimal at best. Additionally, this decision matters because prior to it, we actually had this decision that reversed the disproportionate division of the estate despite the fact Dad had to take care of the children while Mom was doing, I don't know what she was doing actually. Keep in mind that case predates by many years our current INDMA, so it probably had minimal precedential value to begin with. However, I think it suggests a shift by the reviewing court that encourages judges to ensure that whenever they divide up an estate, the children of the estate, or in this case, the disabled adults, are still looked after. Moving on, next month will be my deep dive on Illinois' evolving use of orders of protection. And ideally, it will release alongside that guide that I've spent the last 3 months hyping up. Best way to keep in the loop when that comes out is to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. And if you want a preview of some of the topics I'll be covering, I would encourage you to check out this somewhat faster paced video. And finally, for everybody else, until next time, as always, thanks for watching.